continuing in our series for our Beyond Betrayal program. And the question we're looking at today, or at least the topic that we're examining today, is why does God allow pain and suffering? And why, probably it should be why God allows pain and suffering. And the answer we're considering is choice. You know, after you've suffered a betrayal, we may find ourselves wondering why God allowed us to go through that experience. And that the answer to that is choice. And it's interesting, and we're going to look at this a little bit more closely in our broadcast today, is that the choice is not only on their side of the relationship, but it's also on yours. And so let's take a closer look at that on the other side of our brief break. Sometimes there's a little delay in getting the equipment to work right. How are you doing, Karen?
Oh, pretty good. How about you?
Good, good. It's just been a crazy day for me today. And so, but a lot of times that happens. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
never had any of those.
No.
Yeah. So that,
I also never lie.
yeah, yeah. So we're talking about pain and suffering and why God allows that. And one of the things that we will see is with respect to choice. Let's just go ahead and watch. What we've been doing is we've been taking some clips from Charles Stanley.
Mhm.
He's a popular pastor who now is dead, but he has some videos out there, and we want to take a look at what he says about this topic. So let's go ahead and we'll watch his video. It's just about 15 seconds, and then we'll react.
Oftentimes, suffering comes with the freedom to choose. If I choose what is good for me, does that mean I will never have suffering? No. If I choose what is wrong for me, will I always have suffering? Most of the time, and eventually, yes.
So you said you like what he says when he says most of the time and eventually yes.
Yeah. So wrong choices will most of the time lead us to suffering, but eventually it will
Yeah,
always lead us to suffering.
always catches up with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um so you had a quote that you wanted to read about that. Share that with us, please.
Well, it's not specifically about that, but yeah, this is from the book that's called Why Does God Let Bad Things Happen?
Mm-hmm.
And it says, God is the giver of every good gift. He is the king of the universe, and everything we have comes from him. But we don't treat God like the king. Each of us ignores him and forgets him and makes a mess out of any possibility of friendship with him. And God gives us the consequences of our choice. Our messed up relationship with God leads to messed up friendships with each other and a messed up relationship with God's world. We humans all hurt each other, all of the wrong. We all do the wrong thing. We all contribute to what's gone wrong in the world, sometimes by accident and sometimes on purpose. The line between good and evil cuts straight through the middle of every human heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. So how about when you have been on the receiving end of suffering?
Hmm.
Um, how did human choice factor into that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have the ability to choose to be kind or to be mean. And so, yeah, sin or you know being like just not having good fruit in your life
Mm-hmm.
um, is a choice, and it causes a rift in relationships, and it breaks down trust and all sorts of things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that anybody who has been subject to betrayal understands the role that choice plays in
Hmm.
that pain that they've
Yeah.
experienced. But I want to take a look at another aspect of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so let me just bring that up here. And I created a meme the other day, posted it out there on the social media, the interwebs, all of that stuff. And here's what it says. It says, you can have your bitterness, or you can have your spiritual and emotional freedom, but you can't have both.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have your bitterness, or you can have your spiritual and emotional freedom, but you can't have both. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, bitterness is definitely a bondage, and it keeps us stuck in things, stuck in our problems instead of working towards a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Bitterness is like a glue, basically. It doesn't allow you to move forward because it keeps you just going back and back and back and back,
Mm-hmm.
ruminating
Mm-hmm.
on the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, do you think bitterness is a sin?
Yeah, well, I would say that it's definitely a consequence of sin. I'm not sure if it is I would say that it's hmm. is- Yeah, I would guess so, because it says, "Do not let any bitterness or
Mm-hmm.
rage or malice or things like that." So I would guess it's wrong. I guess so.
Yeah,
It depends on. I mean, it's not one of the Ten Commandments or something like that, but
no.
don't let any root of bitterness grow up in you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And defile the many, it says in
yeah,
that passage. Yeah. Here's an easy way to flip it: is bitterness a sin? Well, definitely we know it's not a virtue.
right.
You know, it's not something, obviously virtues or good qualities in our life.
Hmm.
We want to increase in those and
Yeah.
grow in those. But when
Hmm.
we grow in our bitterness, all it does is it takes us into negative and dark spaces,
Hmm.
and even, uh, death of our spirits,
Yeah.
and it just destroys our life and our relationship.
Yeah.
Jesus says this in John 10:10. He says that I have come that you may have life and have it to the full, or have it abundantly.
Hmm.
And I've never met anybody who carries bitterness forward. Um, has I've never met anybody who does that, who has an abundant life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
and so it gets complicated, because sometimes we are embittered because of what others have done to us,
Hmm.
but sometimes we are embittered because of what God allowed
Hmm.
to happen in our lives.
And sometimes because of choices that we've made,
Exactly.
bring
Yeah.
us to a point where we don't want to be. But yeah.
Yeah. And circling back to what, the theme of this particular broadcast is choice, is
Hmm.
that bitterness is a choice,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah. Oh, and let me just ask you this. And we didn't rehearse any of this stuff beforehand, obviously. but but what if bitterness is so destructive to our souls?
Hmm.
Then why do people stay stuck in it? Other than that sin is addictive,
Hmm.
why do we stay stuck in bitterness?
Hmm. I think sometimes it's easier to be upset about something than to do the hard work of moving forward on it, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Uh,
really good. Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to blame than it is to take responsibility.
hmm.
And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we take responsibility for the wrong that others have done, or that we take responsibility for just the difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in life, but
Hmm.
we must take responsibility for our healing,
Yeah.
you know, and we must
Yeah.
actively seek that. And we also must actively seek, not only in our healing project, we must actively seek to be healed from bitterness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after, well, I guess in the midst of my betrayal that I've been working through, is that
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, it started kind of being obvious to me that what I was dealing with was uh, someone who was appeared to be a good tree bearing good
Mm-hmm.
fruit, but was actually deceptively rotten tree, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and and so the analogy of a tree for me has been really powerful, visual, and there's so many parts in scripture that talk about it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fruit of the spirit, if you think about all those: love, joy, peace,
Yeah.
patience, kindness, you know, um, but then you think about the opposite of that, and if
Yeah.
you're not producing good fruit, what are you producing?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and any tree that does not produce good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
And I think bitterness is one of those things where it actually grows within you, is that
Mm-hmm.
once it take, like when it says don't let it take root, to me it's like,
Yeah.
okay, don't allow it to start growing where you're not even seeing it, because once it starts
Mm-hmm.
growing in there and taking root,
Yeah.
then it's like there, um, you think of a fruit tree is very slow growing, but the things
Mm-hmm.
like bitterness and rage and all those kind of things, they're like weeds. They can be like 3 feet tall the next day. You
I
don't even
know.
see it, and then boom, you're like,
Yeah.
how'd this get here?
Yeah. Yeah. Really. So I know that we are on a short time schedule here today. How about, is there anything else that you'd like to talk about before we wrap up this broadcast about bitterness, or any final remarks?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that stood out to me when we were thinking about wrong choices
Mm-hmm.
is the passage in, I think it's John, where he talks about the man who was born blind, and
Mm-hmm.
asks if, uh, you know, who sinned, his
Yeah.
parents or him,
Him or hit. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and Jesus says neither
Mm-hmm.
are the cause of his blindness, but the cause is that so that God could be glorified in this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think every single one of our trials is that God could be glorified in them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah. That's
so
good.
it doesn't make the trial like any less difficult, but it does make it, your perspective is that God is going to do something good, and
Mm-hmm.
that he is going to use this. It's not, he
Yeah.
doesn't waste our pain, and that's
Yeah.
not just a cliche.
Yeah. Yeah. He's going to, and another cliche, but that's not just a cliche, is that he will take our mess and make it our message.
Hmm.
And God will use that in a very powerful way in our lives to bring glory to Him, which is always a good thing. It's not like, He's an egomaniac, that whenever we're seeking to bring glory to God, we are really seeking what is best in life, you
Hmm.
know. So,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
thanks for jumping in today
Hmm.
on short notice in order for us to talk about this. I would encourage folks who are watching to think seriously about this issue of choice, and particularly how that intersects with bitterness. I am grateful for Karen and her desire to share her story, parts of her story. And that's really what brought me into this project too, is is pain and suffering, and so many people just seem to flounder in that. and they never do leverage their pain and suffering for healing and growth and recovery. We want to do that, and we want to help you in whatever way we can. There's resources that we made available online at beyondbetrayal.org, and also on Facebook. If you'll go to our Facebook private group, beyondbetrayal.org, you can also get access to those resources. So that's it for today. I hope you'll catch us again next time. Bye.